Prophet Muhammad is believed to have received his first revelation 610 years after the birth of Christ, 610 CE. This is the official year Islam is believed to have been born. This was about 14,000 years ago. The teachings of Islam and the most important tenets of the religion were established and spread across the Arabian Peninsula over the next 23 years. Between the 8th and the 10th centuries, Islam had already spread outside of the Arabian Peninsula into the Middle East, North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, including modern day Spain and Portugal, Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, the Indian subcontinent, and parts of East Africa. The birth of Sufism. Sufism or Islamic mysticism is believed to have shaped into a movement around 100 to 200 years after the first revelation, when Islam had already become widespread as a religion. While a certain amount of mysticism and a desire for direct union with God must always have existed, over time these practices became more aligned in the form of a movement. While traditional Islam looked at God as reachable through strict obedience, adherence to the Islamic law or the Sharia law, and diligently performing religious obligations, Sufism had a more inner focused lens through which it looked at God. It emphasized experiencing God within oneself and advocated that a direct connection with God was possible for all beings through dhikr or remembrance and meditation rather than just diligence and obedience. A lot of us early Islamic saints were also ascetics who sought to turn away from all aspects of material life. Hassan al Basri, born in 642 CE, is believed to be the first prominent Sufi saint we know of today. The word Sufi is believed to have come from the Arabic word suf, which means wool, symbolizing the simple woolen garments worn by these early mystics. Sufi practices are focused inward and they look at divinity as something that can be directly sought by a human being. The practices that developed over time in Sufism differed significantly from traditional Islam. For one, Sufism has beautiful and profound poetry. Sufi poetry uses metaphors, allegories, and symbolic language where God is spoken as a lover and human beings are portrayed as being in separation from that lover, longing to be reunited. There is wonderful Sufi poetry across languages, across cultures and times. Poets such as Rumi, Hafiz, and Sadi wrote in Farsi, while poets like Bulle Shah wrote in Punjabi and Urdu. There is also Sufi poetry in Arabic and Turkish languages. Setting it apart from the absolutely reverent way in which God is supposed to be invoked in traditional Islam, Sufis invoked God in a much more playful, personal, and intimate way. Poetry across different languages speaks about the themes of separation from God, known as firak, and the longing for reunion, known as hijr. Interestingly, the same words are used in Urdu and Arabic to describe separation and longing in romantic relationships. God in these poems and songs is spoken of as the ultimate true beloved or ashik. Themes of wine and the tavern are often invoked, not to encourage or normalize alcohol, which is completely forbidden in traditional Islam, but as a figurative comparison of intoxication that may result from closeness or union with God. The idea is that as a human being gets closer to God, the rigid ideals and rules necessary to sustain material life become meaningless and one loses reverence for them, just as an intoxicated person loses their reverence for the worldly rules of propriety and political correctness. The Sufi idea of God is deeply abstract and away from the rules of the world, as Rumi beautifully expressed, out beyond ideas of wrong and right, there lies a field, I will meet you there. But it is also deeply uplifting and personal, like when Hafiz said, I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being. And in some instances, Sufi poetry was spectacularly secular, like when Hazrat Bulle Shah said, I have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, or a Buddhist. Sufi practices and rituals. In Sufi tradition, a pir or a murshid, equivalent to the concept of a guru or a spiritual mentor, has always been very important. Seeking blessings from deceased saints is also a very common practice. In the Indian subcontinent, one can find many such places. These are called dargahs, where millions of devotees from all religions come every day to ask for blessings from deceased Sufi saints. The Sufi concept of Sama, a gathering with music and dance, is so popular that the word Sama has been integrated into the Hindi language. Sufism was instrumental in the spread of Islam in the Indian subcontinent, Africa, Southeast Asia, and even the Balkans. In these places, Sufism is not just accepted, it is celebrated. Sufism has influenced traditional songs, poetry, and culture in the Indian subcontinent beyond Islam. Sufi music and poetry are widely used in movies, drama, and literature. I come from a state that is almost 100% Hindu, which is Rajasthan, and the folk music of my state has incorporated several Sufi elements. This is how deeply Sufism is a part of some cultures. The evolution of the Sufi orders or the tariqas. As with everything in the material world, over time, as Sufism became more structured and it traveled across the world, different tariqas or orders of Sufism emerged. Yes, a system that proposes that ultimately God is beyond any rigid structure or order, eventually formed its own structure and distinct lineages. Each tariqa or each Sufi order has a distinct personality with a charismatic Sufi saint associated with it and leading it usually. For example, the Chishtiya order, which is prevalent in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, focuses on religious tolerance and sama, music as a form of devotion. The Naqshbandiya order, it places primary importance on Sharia, dhikr, and inner purification. So it is stricter in that sense. The Mevlevi Tariqa or the Mevlevi order, it is primarily significant in Turkey and the Balkans, and it's famous for the whirling dervishes founded by Jalaluddin Rumi. Persecution and resistance. While Sufism is deeply rooted in Islam, it has often faced resistance from both traditional Islamic scholars and political authorities. The reasons are varied. Some see Sufism as a deviation from Orthodox Islam, while others fear its independence from state controlled religion. Criticism from traditional Islamic scholars. Some of the key objections against Sufism from conservative Islamic scholars include it is bid'ah, which is religious innovation. Many Sufi practices do not originate directly from Prophet Muhammad, leading critics to label them as unacceptable religious innovations. Excessive veneration of the saints. Seeking blessings from deceased saints is seen by some as bordering on shirk, which is polytheism, which is actually the greatest sin in Islam. Music and dance in worship. Some conservative schools of thought consider music and dancing is in religious practices as un-Islamic. Mystical language and metaphors. Sufi poetry often describes God in deeply personal, even romantic terms, which some find inappropriate for discussing the divine. Despite these criticisms, mainstream Sufism does follow the Islamic law and considers alcohol as completely forbidden. However, some heterodox or rebellious Sufis, for example the Qalandars, have been known to drink openly to challenge religious hypocrisy. Not just traditional Islamic scholars, various governments have banned, restricted, or controlled Sufi practices due to their independence from state sanctioned Islam. For example, the Ottoman Empire between the 19th and 20th century, they initially supported Sufism, but they later banned the dervish orders of Sufism, such as the Mevlevi whirling dervishes, for political reasons. Turkey in the modern day era, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk banned Sufi orders in 1925, seeing them as obstacles to modernization. Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabi rulers demolished Sufi shrines and banned Sufi practices for being incompatible with their strict interpretation of Islam. In Iran, the Iranian government has persecuted some Sufi groups, such as the Gonabadi Sufis, for challenging state controlled Shia Islam. Extremist attacks on Sufism. In recent decades, extremist Islamic groups have violently targeted Sufis, accusing them of heresy and polytheism. Examples of violent Sufi attacks include ISIS and Al Qaeda. They bombed Sufi shrines and mosques and assassinated Sufi scholars in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia. In Pakistan, groups such as Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Lashkar-e-Jhangvi attacked major Sufi shrines, including the Lal Shahbaz Qalandar shrine in the 2017 bomb attack, and they killed 88 people. In countries like Mali and Somalia, Sufi tombs were destroyed in attacks by groups like Al Shabaab. But not all resistance comes from the government or by extremist groups or traditional Islamic scholars. A lot of resistance to Sufism also comes from rationalists and secular thinkers. uh, some modernist and secular Muslims oppose Sufism for different reasons, however. They believe that Sufism promotes superstition over reason and science. They believe that Sufism weakens political activism by focusing on spiritual escapism. Also, some of them believe that Sufism encourages submission to religious authorities like the Sufi sheikhs, which can lead to mass manipulation. For example, Jamal al-Din Afghani, a 19th century reformer, criticized Sufism for making Muslims passive in the face of Western colonialism. My final thoughts on Sufism. Sufism has always had a complex relationship with traditional Islam. Some see it as a deviation, while others see it as the heart and the soul of Islam. To me, Sufism is to Islam what love is to marriage. They are not at odds with each other necessarily, and when they do merge and coexist, it's the absolute best case scenario. However, love can exist without marriage, and marriage can exist without love. Love, like Sufism, can afford to be abstract. It can afford to be without any rules. It can even afford to be unconsummated. And the only validation you really need is the validation you feel it has. Marriage, on the other hand, is built on rules, it is goal oriented, and it belongs in the material world, even though its roots can be metaphysical. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.